Formula One has its moments, it has its highs, it's got its lows, and none other than Mr. Sir Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion. I know people are saying 8 in the background, I can hear you. And yes, we can acknowledge him for sure for that. But Lewis Hamilton is somebody who's come out recently. We read in The Guardian here, local UK newspaper, that he's been struggling with depression and mental health his entire life. It's been something that he's battled with for ages, forever, ever since he can remember as a kid, stemming from school where he was bullied up until his racing days, until this moment in time right now, where he's gone through all sorts of abuse. He's gone through all sorts of racial abuse and just hard struggles coming up. And any sort of toughness that you've had to go through in your life can have mental effects. It doesn't have to be racial. It doesn't have to be anything of that nature or anything bad per se. It could just be the grind of trying to make a living, the grind of trying to be successful in everything you do. And I can definitely say I've been among some of those people that have struggled mentally with things from time to time. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton came out in an article in The Guardian where he said he's literally battled with it his whole life. And he kind of touched on the fact that in school he was bullied. He was bullied by all of his kids in school. And, school is tough for people. School is a very, very tough and challenging one, depending as well what area you grew up in, depending on sort of who you are in comparison to that sort of demographic that you've grown up in. If you've gone into predominantly, particular race school, maybe a particular religious background, some sort of cultures, different things like that. If you don't fit in, that can always be a challenge for anyone. It doesn't have to be a Formula One driver. It doesn't have to be anyone famous. It could just be everyday people. Everybody has struggled with mental health at some stage, has had that challenge of mentality at some stage. And if you don't believe you have, then you clearly either, props to you if you haven't, because you might just be an absolute beast. And I love that. That's what we all want to be. We want to strive to be the best. But then, majority of people have been very much affected in some way, shape or form through circumstances, through tragedies, through hardships, whatever the case may be. We've always had to go through that. But yeah, he talked about bullying in school, and school's tough, man. School is tough. Let's have it right. And it doesn't matter which school you went to. It doesn't really matter which country you grew up in. It's tough for anybody when it comes to that sort of thing. So big up to Lewis because he's come out with it, and it's something that I think is very important message for everybody to understand, because Lewis Hamilton isn't your everyday person. Do you know what I mean? In the sense that this is a famous worldwide superstar that you would not see down the road, just anyhow. But he is a human being like everybody else. He has got skin and bones just like everybody else. Okay. And when you sort of hear him talk the way he does about his mental health, it makes people feel normal, because a lot of ordinary, normal, day-to-day people who are not famous, who haven't got millions and millions of pounds or dollars, they might think that they're in a different world, they live in a different planet. And yeah, there is, to an extent, it feels like that for sure. They're not in the same caliber as such, but it doesn't matter. Mental health affects all people, regardless. It affects everyone in some way, shape, or form. It affects them differently. It comes at all angles for different people. Some people can go through some of the hardest things in life and be fine, but sometimes there's something small that will hit them that will really, really knock their confidence. It's crazy. I know it in my own personal life that there are some things that probably should have taken me out, or at least really made me feel depressed for a long period of time. And then there's some things where you're like, what are you so annoyed about? What are you struggling with here? Why are you letting this affect you mentally? It's weird. It's just how mental health works. There's not quite a definitive line of thinking. It's not logical. It's not something that you can sort of put your hand to or touch, or it's not fabricated as such. But yeah, this is good to see Hamilton come out with this, because it raises a few things. Because look, I've seen his Formula One career since he started, and I've seen the racist abuse that he took in Spain, for example, back in 2008, 2009. around that time. I've seen obviously the comment section of like social media. Social media is brutal. And in the Formula One world, it's absolutely, it's got some vile accounts for sure. So some of the things that you will see on there, and these drivers ain't blind to it. Everybody sees it. Everyone sees what's going on. They see what's happening. And just the way people portray Lewis Hamilton, they kind of love him or they hate him. There's no real like in between, really. You don't really get that much in between. You get a lot of people that either just they're at the cult of Lewis Hamilton, or it's like it's hellfire and brimstone type of thing. And it's strange because you just sort of have to think, I can't answer the question why are people like this, but there are people out there that do this, and this is a British man who has been racially abused by Brits as well, and it's somebody who waves the flag and flies the flag for England to this day, no matter what it is he's gone through. And the case for him as well, this is somebody who's also mixed race, so white mother, black father, and it's like very, it's almost like, I don't know what it's like for mixed race people, but it's almost like you think, oh, do they have the best of both worlds, or do they have the worst of both worlds? Or is it somewhere in between? Are you in your own island altogether? Is it like an own world for them? Honestly, I'd have to hear more people who are of the similar backgrounds like Lewis and to give us some insight, because it's very, very important that we are educated, that we're not stupid, that we're not ignorant, that we don't act like imbeciles, that we actually act like normal human beings, treating everybody with respect, treating everybody, with love, you know what I mean? Like with some sort of love and passion. I'm not saying hugs and kisses, but just the simple politeness, the respect. And it's crazy because you think, Formula One champion, 7-time world champion. He's got some of the best life in the world, if you will. But it's never that simple. And now, listen, I'm not a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. I'd love to have been a Formula One driver, and maybe I would have felt happier. But sometimes it's not even the case. And it's kind of good to see somebody at the pinnacle of their sport, the pinnacle of their life, and tell us, like, what, inside some of the things I go through is tough. I mean, you've got to look at the pressure as well on Lewis Hamilton, right? This is a guy who his dad had to work like 7 jobs to get him in through karting. Thing with Formula One, unfortunately, or motorsport for that matter, it's not a cheap sport to get into. There is so much talent across the world that could be, some of the best in terms of Formula One drivers in the world. And with all due respect to those drivers as well, there are some drivers on that Formula One grid we cannot deny are there purely on things other than the racing craft. And that's a shame. We should not be having drivers in Formula One that are getting there just because they're being paid. And if they are, I just would love to see, give me the talent first, and then we can talk about money and everything else, which I think is ludicrous. I mean, Hamilton's dad having to work 4 jobs to get him through karting. We're not talking about Formula One itself. We're talking about some of the just the grind is just, it's just when you hear about it, you're so put off by it all because it's just a bit too ridiculous. It's a bit too much. Now imagine you're Lewis Hamilton, right? And your dad has worked 4 jobs to try and make your career work in motorsport. What kind of pressure does that put on you? By the way, the greatest dad of all time. Do you know what I mean? Like he's up there as one of the best. So this is not a knock to him. Absolutely not. Not at all to Anthony Hamilton. Absolutely not. But you're the son of somebody who really put their life on the line. And did everything they could to make sure you got into Formula One and be world champion and win races, right? So you can imagine what kind of pressure that was in his early stages of his career. As much as he was very confident, Hamilton definitely portrays a very confident manner, a very much a man who is sure of himself. But you sort of start to learn and peel the onion a little bit. I mean, he spoke in The Guardian, or I can't remember what the original article was from, but the Guardian did talk about it. And basically said, during the pandemic, 5 a.m. every morning, I woke up just to meditate. Just to kind of search within himself, try and almost learn himself and sort of, really feel his emotions, really understand what's going on mentally with him and emotionally. And I think it's very important that people do have a moment to have some stillness and peace and quiet and sort of, be in a tranquil moment where you start to learn and decipher certain things, and just know that, okay, look, here's what I'm dealing with, here's what I'm battling with, and this is how to overcome it. And in his career, in his Formula One racing career, to bring it to Formula One, right? You look at scenes like Abu Dhabi 2021, right? It's a hurdle that I don't think anyone will ever forget in Formula One, let alone Lewis Hamilton, let alone like a Max Verstappen, or even what was the guy, the FIA guy called? I forgot his name. That completely escapes me. But the guy who made that call basically, and basically made the craziest call in Formula One history, up there anyway, certainly up there, in terms of really hurting the sport, to the point where he was even relieved of his duties. But when you consider, like, since then, Hamilton hadn't won a race in Formula One until like literally this season, where he won the British Grand Prix, and you could hear the emotions after the British Grand Prix. The guy was in floods of tears. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't believe that he'd done it, because to overcome that hill. Mercedes car then wasn't obviously great over the next couple of years. They've had their own mares, and which wouldn't have helped. But Lewis Hamilton then obviously had to try and overcome and can he be? Is he a fast driver? Is he a world champion? Is he the fastest on the grid, like he always was and used to be? And he doubted himself. He had a lot to battle with himself in that time as well. Am I finished? Am I done? Is it over for me? Is Formula One finished? And I thought to myself, there's no way it can't be finished for him. There's no way it can be. So when he won that Grand Prix at Silverstone, it was crazy. And obviously he's won another Grand Prix as well through technicality. But yeah, so he's got 2 race wins this season. But, you just sort of think about some of the things he's had to overcome and battle with. I remember Abu Dhabi 2021 vividly, especially when his dad, in fact, when the race ended, there's a scene where Hamilton, they normally have scenes of drivers sort of getting out of their car and basically finishing, getting weighed and stuff like that. And there's a scene where he just sits in the car because, he's saying over the radio, they've manipulated this race. They've absolutely screwed him over. And I don't think he can understand what's happening. Like, he can't believe where he is. And I think after that race, obviously it was the last race of the season in 21. I think he went away to Africa and whatnot, just stayed there for however many months on end, just to find something, just to find something within himself. I don't know what I would have done in that scenario if I was Lewis Hamilton, to even come back to Formula One and try and go again after what felt like the sport failed him, ruined his legacy there. He should be 8-time world champion right now. The fact that I call him 7-time world champion even hurts, or even doesn't sound right, doesn't feel good. He should be 8-time world champion at this moment in time. But also another thing that kind of hits me is that every time the title, he used to give out quotes, and it used to feel very, cliche to all the kids out there who didn't, who believe the impossible, or believe that anything's possible. He would say a lot of this stuff, right? Because he would go on the team radio, or go, broadcasted live to the feed, so the whole world can hear it. And I used to just sort of think, yeah, it's nice of him. He did give me that kind of cheesy vibe to him a little bit. But and I don't mean that, it sounds harsh even just saying that and admitting that, but there's now so much context to it that it's almost like, okay, this is a guy who kind of, you feel like you believe what he's saying. He lived what he's saying, and even if he's ever doubted himself, he knows, no, this is not the be all and end all. Like, I will overcome, I will do better, I will get to where I need to be. Still I rise, that whole thing, like his whole kind of persona and mantra, God is great. This is the kind of balance, this is the kind of the things he stands on. He's had to build those principles. But he's not immune to depression. He's not immune to mental health. He's not immune to struggling with it, let's say. And so, this sort of stuff affects people all around the world. Kids, even when you're a kid, when you're an adult, it still affects you all around the world. And, it's going to be interesting. He joins Ferrari in 2025. And I'm just intrigued just to see. I'm not a Ferrari guy in the slightest, but I would love to see Lewis Hamilton win a race with Ferrari. I'd like to see him win a title again, because it would kind of just like end the chapter, But more importantly, especially on this mental health kind of vibe, you've got to be at peace with it not happening, with the possibility of it not happening. And even if you don't get that full redemption as such, that shouldn't lead you into staying in a certain way and staying in a certain state. And it's important to go and seek help and get therapy and whatever else. Pray. If you're somebody religious, pray. It's very interesting. It's very important, man. It's just important. A lot of these battles we go through and everything else can be dealt with and made a lot easier when we hear these stories, when we look at our own lives, reflect on our own lives. A lot of these things can be helped. So it was really good to see Hamilton come out with that, and I just love his relentlessness. He's somebody who tried and tried. You think about his 2008 World Championship. It was up against the odds, really. Second year in Formula One, won the title. It's like Piastri winning it now. This season. Then you think about, from 2008, he didn't win a title again until 2014. That's a big gap, by the way, that we think that people just kind of forget existed. Then they see this 2014 where he won, 2014, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20. He won those years, and you think, wow, this is a beast. This is an animal. But he went through a lot. He went through a lot, like most drivers, like any driver would. And just to see him come out with that was actually very, very, very brave, very eye-opening as well. And it's just good to hear when people are at the top, when they're there, and they're still able to share and be human, if you will. It's great to see. So I want to salute Lewis Hamilton on opening up and sharing his battle with mental health, and encourage you guys. Anyone that's struggling with mental health, seek help. It's there, and just know that you're like Lewis Hamilton. You two have things in common. We all do. And if he can overcome, there's no reason why you can't. Forget money, forget being famous, forget being a Formula One world champion. None of that matters. What matters is up here mentally. And so to sort of end this video, if you've ever struggled with mental depression, or if you've ever overcome anything, or you're battling with it right now, or having some sort of depression or anything of that nature, do comment in the comment section below. It'd be good to have a conversation and hear what you guys have gone through, and we go from there. Until next time, lights out.